the poor family, but their daily necessity fulfilled, then remain happily. That's, I think, mentally really richer, isn't it? So I think the contentment also very important.
It was true that the people of India and Tibet seemed content, even if they were living lives and doing work which no ordinary American would consider doing. But even more than that, life is truly hard in these places. But the crime, drug abuse, and murder rates are extremely low compared to Western countries. India and Tibet do not have prisons filled to overcrowding with violent criminals. People in the West seem so quick to anger, while people in this region seemingly have endless patience. Were they just more resigned to their fate? Or was the answer more complex than that?
Then self-discipline, also important. Our desire, if all our desire is just without self-discipline, then yes, you want to kill someone, you want to steal someone, you want to rape someone, you want to tell lie, and then you want to, take, if you face some little problems, then you see you want to take alcohol or drugs. So that's the self-destruction. So you see, in order to save from self-destruction, you need some discipline. So that's the self-discipline, not something ordered from outside, but analyze what the value, what the consequences. Then, yes, today I quarrel with someone. Yes, I lost my temper. And during that moment, I have the desire to kill that person. But if I kill him or kill her, then eventually, if you are lucky, you may survive with help of money or with help of other influence. Otherwise, you have to go to jail. And you also have the bad reputation. You are a murderer. So is it thinking these consequences, then discipline, in spite very furious anger. But still, yes, use this intelligence. Yes, this negative thing, in spite my desire, self-discipline.
The Dalai Lama must have an immense amount of self-discipline to witness the way the Chinese government has methodically marginalized the Tibetan people and their culture in their own homeland. Chinese immigrants have been sent in by the tens of thousands to live in Tibet and colonize it. Temples have been torn down and the cultural past buried, all in the name of modernization.
The city, Lhasa city, much expanded. Now whole valley become like a town or city. So a lot of new building. Unfortunately, when we inquire who occupy in these buildings, most of them were Chinese. Because of Chinese population and Chinese shops and Chinese restaurants, you see public compelled to speak Chinese. If we speak Tibetan, Chinese look down. Now that kind of situation is happening. Intentionally or unintentionally, some kind of culture genocide is actually taking place.
One of the most pressing and urgent issues for the Dalai Lama today has been to preserve his culture in exile before it's lost forever. Music, architecture, art, and dance, which has been destroyed or rigidly suppressed by the Chinese, is celebrated by the Dalai Lama and within the Tibetan community. And yet, in many regions, the world was shrinking and cultural identity was dying. I asked the Dalai Lama how important it was to preserve one's cultural heritage. I've seen native cultures like Tibet and many others, and it seems today that the television, the internet, the telecommunications revolution has penetrated everywhere. And to what extent should cultures be preserving their traditions, their way of life, and so on, and their religious practices? And to what extent should they reach out and embrace the outside world?
That's very, very important question. I think, I believe, certainly in our tradition, in our cultural heritage, certainly some are very useful and really worthwhile to keep in modern time. Some cultural heritage, some tradition, reality out of date, should go. So you see, in Tibetan culture, some kind of, I think, the thinking or habit on the basis of caste, or higher caste or low caste, is out of date. And then the women, what we call the right of what we call widow, isn't it? The husband passed, then the widow can't sort of remarry or these things. These practice out of date. There are some other tradition worthwhile to keep. Generally in the East, the close relation in the family, and the father, children, and then I think India, they respect different as a form of life, how to deal with environment, how to deal with animals. And then religious harmony, religious tolerance, these are really, I think, a good example to the world, to community, to humanity.
Here again, I'm really amazed with his, very sort of broad and open-mindedness about religious tolerance. This idea of his, in which he really strongly, very strongly believes in, that we should respect every major world religious tradition. Each religious tradition is able to contribute towards the well-being of their followers. These religious traditions are able to produce people who are spiritually evolved and who have this sense of compassion, understanding, and tolerance that the Buddhists also talk about. So he says that if the other religious traditions are able to do this and transform human beings into such good beings, every reason to sort of respect these traditions. And then if you look at other religious leaders, many of whom are, I think, not very open and not very tolerant of other religious traditions, I find this very amazing.
In my earlier films, I'd visited almost every country in the Middle East. I had always been amazed at how far otherwise very reasonable people would go to justify their hatred of whole races, religions, lifestyles, and sects in the name of God. I'd come to distrust any literal interpretation of Holy Scripture and almost all fundamentalist religious belief. I honestly believe that religion is causing more death and destruction in the world than healing. I was compelled to ask the Dalai Lama about this observation. My last film was a film on Jerusalem, and I spent a long time in Jerusalem studying the conflicts that have been going on there for 3,000 years between Christians and Jews and Muslims. What is your outlook on the Middle East? Is there hope for the future there? And is there some way that Buddhism can have an impact or an influence on the Middle East?
I've been Jerusalem twice. I found some very open-minded Muslims from local community, and as well as some Jews. There are people who really, they making every sort of effort, peace, harmony, with belief, with their own sort of spiritual belief. But then I do believe all major religious traditions, so all have the same potential to create harmony, to create peace of mind. So sometimes people, very genuine, feeling, sometimes their effect remain limited. On politicians or some other people, once they, due to their behavior, due to their speech, sometimes the things become more complicated. Then these people's effort remain very limited. Too much emotions, too much emotion. I think negative emotion, frustrations, hatred, anger. That's the greatest obstacle. So I think as a first step, these too much emotions, too much negative emotion, this should be cooled down, reduce. Forget these things. I think for the time being, I think more festivals, more sort of picnics. Let people forget these difficult things, these emotions, and make personal friends. Then start to talk about these serious matters.
So festivals were the answer to peace in the Middle East. They certainly filled the Tibetan calendar and kept the Dalai Lama busy when he was at home in Dharamsala. Preserving tradition was only one element of the festivities surrounding the Dalai Lama. Another was bringing all the Tibetan refugees together for occasions of happiness, unity, and meaning. Seeing the new generation come alive with pride for their nation and their spiritual and political mentor surely would warm the heart of even the most cynical of leaders. It might come as a surprise, though, to learn that although the Dalai Lama prescribes festivals as the answer for peace around the world, he personally dislikes them, especially when they're in his honor.
He really doesn't like all these ceremony and rituals, and it's strange also in a way because Tibetans have so many ceremonies and rituals, and I think they love this and they do it also very well, frankly speaking, I think. Some of them are very colorful and very solemn, really, and very beautiful also. But he just doesn't like them, and unless it has some real spiritual significance. If he had his way, he would really do away with all this ceremony and formal sort of part of the thing. Very often, somebody is making a very nice sort of a speech in praise of His Holiness, and he's doing something else, or looking at somebody nearby. Very often he does that. In many sort of official and solemn occasions also, Holiness is sometimes too spontaneous, really. And I've had to mention that to His Holiness, that sometimes it may not be appreciated. But here also I think it's difficult to change, and anything that immediately makes him laugh, he immediately laughs. And sometimes it can be a little embarrassing, but the other good thing is he always laughs about himself also.
If you were President of the United States, how would you persuade the Chinese to leave Tibet? Please be specific.
Use this.
Nowhere does the Dalai Lama's sense of humor come out more than at somber religious occasions and ceremonies of other faiths, where he laughs, jokes, and kids the great religious leaders of the world as if they were his boyhood friends.
The people from the church who were organizing the Christian side were very particular how, you step and, who follows who and, then how you walk through the aisle and all that. And then suddenly he's going to see somebody he, knows in the crowd. He sort of walk out of the line and start shaking. And so he does this very often. But then over the years, I think many of these things, I think, have endeared him to, many people in the West, because they, see this person who is really totally relaxed, informal, spontaneous.
I really appreciate your interest or your concern, and also you are expecting some big news. But I have nothing to offer. Thank you very much.
As a political leader, the Dalai Lama is quick to make judgments, but just as quick to admit that he's wrong. A humble quality not usually associated with politicians in any country.
This, I find it very amazing because, of course, there are countless number of other people who have this false sense of self-importance. Very often, find it so difficult to admit that they're wrong. If you come up with a good reason why he's wrong, immediately accept it.
During his early travels to the United States and Europe, the Dalai Lama refused to travel first class. As a humble monk traveling the world, he didn't want to stay in fancy hotels or spend money on his own comfort.
This is now more or less now normal, routine, something like that. Okay.
Unlike any other world leader, he traveled coach and met the media and his followers at the ordinary gate.
He said, oh, if they are really welcoming me, the person, then it wouldn't matter from which section of the aircraft that I come out of. And if they are sincere, he said, even if I travel by economy class, they will still be very happy to welcome me.
As he's traveled the world, the Dalai Lama has become aware of the Earth's ecosystem as a fragile environment. Over the years, he's become an avid environmentalist, putting pressure on the world's other religious leaders to take steps to limit human overpopulation of our planet.
In order to be a good human being, the economy also now involved, environment also involved. So the nature resources limited. And the environment remain more now, becoming more delicate. So now the question is the population of the human being. Quality is more important than the quantity. So, so you see, a lot of people, we Buddhists believe every human life is precious, precious. So look, each person, each human being, yes, very precious life. But now that precious life, too much. So now the question is, whole precious human being survival now questionable. So the only choice, limited number, happy life, meaningful life. Too many population, miserable life, and always bullying each other, exploiting one another. There's no use.
Hello, I'm Bud Gundy, a writer and producer for KQED. Pleased to be here with my friend Michelle Hannigan of KQED Public